I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, but I was reviewing my YouTube analytics earlier, and it would appear it is just gentlemen. If you have happened to find your way here, you are a lady.
Background?
Welcome. Yeah, there you go. Andy's girlfriend in the back there is the closest we're going to get to a lady in the club, probably. Exciting night here. The club is going up on a Tuesday. We're going to do things a little different. I'm not, ripping shots. I have my glass of wine here because we are going to have a sophisticated conversation with our friend Andy, who you guys remember from a few episodes ago, about decentralized finance. We're going to talk about the expanded world of NFTs beyond Top Shot. And then if you're lucky, if you guys behave, if you aren't spilling drinks, if you aren't breaking our noise violations, we will open some Cool Cats packs. So, Andy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here. After my, I think it was one episode of hiatus.
Yeah.
So it's good to be back.
It feels, in Top Shot time, it's been a century since you were on the show.
Yeah, it feels like years.
Pete, Jack, how we doing?
Back and be more. Got my boy over my shoulder to teach me DeFi.
You're kind of in like the Osimo territory where every time he's doing a stream, he's in a different location.
Literally.
Or I'm just now where are you? Yeah. Pete, how are you doing? You're muted.
Great. Excited to learn from Andy as always.
That's right. I'd gotten wind of some private calls with Andy. Then I got wind of a private call Andy was doing with Jack. And I said, wait. How about we just do this on air for the people and talk DeFi? So that's what we're going to do. So Andy, when we brought you on initially, you told us about your background in Top Shot, but I don't know much about your background as a developer. I still don't even know what Solidity means. So why don't you just kind of do some table setting for us here?
Yeah, sure. So I was back in, what time was it? Like early 2017. I started to get into crypto, and I was half a year out of college-ish time frame. So I was like working my first development job. Didn't really know much. And I kind of found out about Ethereum and started to get involved and learn how to write Solidity. I'll get into what that is in a little bit. But basically, I just kind of got really lucky, and I found a fintech startup in New York that wanted to, or I knew they were interested in crypto, but they weren't explicitly like a crypto company. So I kind of got the chance to learn about it on the job, and we ended up making a token and building some interesting stuff. And then from there, in late 2018, I left to work at MakerDAO, which is one of the leading collateralized loan DeFi protocols on Ethereum. It was, at the time, using something basically collateralized loans using Ethereum to make a stablecoin called DAI. Since then, while I was there, we launched what was known as multi-collateral DAI, where you could back it with multiple different assets on Ethereum. So it works with Ethereum and a lot of the tokens that we'll probably talk about today. I was there for around 2 years doing Solidity work, and then back in November, I left to do something new with some friends who I'd met. We're still technically in stealth, but I'm working on something new. So a bit about what Solidity is. Ethereum it's kind of the main differentiator from Bitcoin, which I don't know if this is too basic for people, but so Ethereum's major differentiator from Bitcoin and a lot of different blockchains, like Flow's differentiator from Bitcoin, is that you can essentially program pretty robust code on top of the protocol. And so Solidity is the primary programming language for building on Ethereum. There are a couple other ones that have come up over the years. One's called Viper. There's another one called Huff that I've never used. I've used Viper a bit here and there. It looks a little more similar to Python. And so I mostly do Solidity code. That's what I've been doing basically full time for the last 3 or so years. primarily working and building on decentralized finance applications because that's been the big first boom on Ethereum. Now we kind of have this new NFT thing going on, but for a while, people didn't really care about NFTs that much. Yeah, that's basically what I've been doing on Ethereum for the last couple of years.
One thing I hear a lot from people is, through the kind of bear market there when, Bitcoin had kind of stalled out, at least from a price perspective, that all the devs and the people working on it were still hard at work building these tools. And I sometimes hear this idea that you guys kind of appreciate not having the whole like price movement limelight on things while you guys are able to actually get things ready for the next wave of users. Is that the case?
100%. People who are building in the space are 10 times better at building when the prices are down because it's a little multifaceted. It definitely can be draining when things are going poorly price wise. It can be a little bit draining because a lot of people on the outside may be like either taking shots at people who are building in the space and saying, oh, this X and Y Z is a scam. They don't actually care. And so that can be a little annoying, but eventually, at least for me, I've kind of figured out how to just kind of block out that noise because it's just people who don't actually know what they're talking about. For the most part, every once in a while there's a scam or something, but for the most part, people don't know what they're talking about. But then it's really nice to build when the price is going down because, like, as developers who are making these things, you can see the value in what you're building, and it just kind of removes a lot of the noise at a certain point where you're just can be heads down building this and you're not distracted with a million other things because it's very distracting when everything's going up. I just want to refresh CoinGecko every 5 minutes and see what's going on or things like that. And it's the same thing with Top Shot or anything. When everything's going up, it's really distracting. There's a lot of like euphoria feeling that can kind of get in the way of focusing on the hard work. But when everything's down or going down, it's more like, all right, we have to get shit done. We have to build out what our vision is. And so sometimes it can be a little easier. Yeah.
So why don't you now kind of lay the framework for what DeFi is? It's almost a buzzword at this point. I want to say I saw a chart where it had even surpassed Bitcoin in some Google search metrics at one point. Like it seems like everyone is talking about it right now.
Yeah, it definitely is the hot topic of Ethereum, which is funny because for a while it wasn't. Back in like 2017, 2018, a lot of the focus on Ethereum was building a lot of democratized things of different fields like supply chain, like community stuff, bounties, a lot of different networks. And then as the developer space in Ethereum kind of grew, one thing that really just kind of took off is decentralized finance. And so kind of some of the first movers there were, one of the big things was loans. And I think part of that is it's a really kind of easy concept to understand, and the actual execution of them is very challenging. They're some of the most complex protocols that people are building, but the core idea is you put in Ethereum or whatever money you have, and then you can borrow something else. And so that kind of, it started with a couple different projects, Maker, Compound, Aave, which at the time when this was all kind of getting started was previously known as ETHLend, and then they rebranded to Aave. I'm not sure when. Within the last like 2 years, they rebranded to Aave. And so those kind of were a bit of a catalyst. And then one of the, probably the most important thing that has happened on Ethereum to date was the launch of Uniswap. And people might disagree with me, but I think that Uniswap was and has been and will continue to be extremely important to Ethereum and decentralized finance. And the idea there is Uniswap is an automated market maker where you don't need an order book in order to execute trades. And that's really valuable on Ethereum or any decentralized protocol because order books don't really work that great when you have to submit transactions constantly to fill them. They work really nicely when you can have bots that are working on a centralized exchange, just going back and forth, updating prices, making markets. But on Ethereum and and other chains, it kind of is a little bit easier to just have pools of liquidity, and that will move the price based on need to be constantly updating order books. So that was a really, really big thing for Ethereum. And then after that, things kind of really blew up. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. There's now like leveraged and perpetual trading, which is really cool. And that kind of, it borrows from a lot of the from the collateralized borrowing markets actually, and how they do things. There's ways to earn interest on what you're holding, and that's pretty interesting. Yearn Finance is one of the big ones there. There's a bunch of other smaller projects that are working on similar things, like Rary Capital and a few others. And then this past summer was really big for DeFi, and people have kind of called it DeFi summer. It was started with Compound, and it introduced the idea of yield farming. And yield farming has been kind of what has, in my opinion, pushed DeFi into this next phase where you have crazy returns on things, and you can earn 20, 30, 40, 50, 100% interest on your capital. And the idea that Compound had was basically to incentivize people to use their platform by paying them in their governance token. And while that sounds really trivial now, no one had really thought about it or figured it out or done it before. And it just launched a whole craze of new people launching projects or updating projects to pay other people to use their project with their token. And that launched just like a ton of capital into the space because it became really, really cost effective. It was insanely plus EV to put your money into DeFi. And that's kind of how we've gotten to where we are today in the fastest possible way to explain what DeFi is and where we're at.
I think one thing that's maybe hard for people to wrap their head around, and also a byproduct of everyone coming out of that first Bitcoin bull run in 2017, and you had all the ICOs popping up, and you had a lot of this stuff that, you had this vision for crypto, and you could see the kind of utopic vision for it, but then there were all these people trying to ride those coattails and making up these products and ICOs that didn't actually have value. How do people kind of untangle now that we have this kind of DeFi era with all this stuff popping up? Like, what is the kind of utopic vision for DeFi working out? And what are maybe some of the things people need to look for if they're just trying to get rich? Because that is a lot of people like, which coin do I have that's going to go up 2x versus like the actual use case real world scenario for these things?
Yeah, and that's definitely a hard question, because I think part of that is everyone's going to have different opinions on it as well, as far as what is a real use case, real adoption. But one of the things that is much easier this time around, I think, when it comes to evaluating projects, is you can actually see where the money is. Previously in 2017, all these ICOs were just ideas. They were just white papers and ideas, and some of them worked out and a lot of them didn't. Whereas right now, you can go and look, and because the blockchain is open, see that there are, $40 billion locked in DeFi. And you can look at what protocols have the most locked in DeFi. I'll pull up a list right now. I haven't looked in a bit. I want to make sure my numbers are right. So you can see that MakerDAO has $6.3 billion locked up in it.
Is that somewhere, Andy, that you're looking, or is that something you have on your own?
Yeah, so the place that I go to most often is Defipulse.com. There are a few other ones. There's one like DeFi Llama that's been gaining some traction. I'm sure there are more that I'm going to miss. Defipulse, yeah, this has been my kind of go-to place. And so here you can see this is a super easy snapshot of what's happening in DeFi. Where's the money? So you can see that like Maker, Aave, and Compound, as I said, lending is huge. The three largest total value locked all over, or pushing 5 billion, which is crazy. And even just a few months ago, we were celebrating like 5 billion locked, and the first protocol getting over 1 billion total value locked inside of it. And it's just kind of gone parabolic. If you were to change out of the 90-day total value locked to like the 1 year, it's just crazy. It's grown massively over the last couple of months.
What's the difference between earning and farming?
Yeah, so I think this is also something that maybe if you ask someone else, they might have a different answer. But in my opinion, farming is generally used when talking about putting your assets to work in a protocol that is paying you with their token. So if you are providing liquidity on Sushi Swap, you are farming Sushi tokens. Whereas earning, to me, is more just putting your assets to work in a DeFi protocol that is paying you interest or something because your assets are valuable to someone else who wants to pay you interest for them. For example, on Compound, you can put your USDC on Compound right now and earn like 7 or 8% annual interest because there are other people who are willing to pay 15% to borrow that Compound from, or that USDC from you on Compound. So that's the main differentiator there.
Jack, you got any questions here? I don't want to dominating the questions here.
I don't know if it's just me or it's helpful for the chat, but I feel like even though this is beginner level, like we might need to dumb it down, like even more. Like
we can get down.
Like what does DeFi stand for? Let's start there.
It stands for Decentralized Finance.
Got it. Okay, that's good. Number one. Number two, I literally can't even begin to understand how does someone lend? How do I lend? I need that question answered of I have some Bitcoin and I see everyone's making money off of interest, right? And you told me I can own my keys, right, while still lending it out. But it's decentralized. So there's no if someone defaults on a loan, right, there's no one to go after them. So what's the security aspect of it? And then how do I hold my keys while lending it? And then where do you go and lend it?
Yeah. All right. So it's a multifaceted response. So I'll start with explicitly in the case of I have Bitcoin, how do I earn interest on my Bitcoin? The one caveat that I want to add for specifically Bitcoin is using Bitcoin on Ethereum is something that people do a lot of, but it is not pure Bitcoin. You have to go through a process of moving your Bitcoin onto Ethereum, and you will hear from a lot of people that is not as secure, and they're right. It's not as secure as keeping your Bitcoin on Bitcoin. There's some potential third-party risks that could come along with that. For example, the most popular Bitcoin on Ethereum is called Wrapped Bitcoin, and they have basically what are known as like minters, and so there are different third parties in the space who are very well known, reputable, and they're insured, but they essentially will custody your Bitcoin and mint you wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum and give that to you. So I just wanted to start with that caveat because there's people who feel very strongly about that. There are different protocols that are working on more decentralized versions of what that could be. Keep Network and Ren Protocol are two of the big ones, but they're not quite as popular as Wrapped Bitcoin yet. I think just because of the ease of use, and people generally do trust these custodial entities, and there's more than one to choose from. But so all that to say, at that point, I'm going to stick with Compound because it's the easiest, and then I'll get into a couple other ones. But so the way that Compound works, and Aave essentially works exactly the same. Well, their code is different, but the idea is pretty much the same. And so they are money markets. So one thing that's important to remember is every loan that you take out through one of these things is actually over collateralized. If you want to borrow $100, you have to put up $150. Not exactly, but general idea. So if I want to borrow $100 of Ethereum from Compound, and I have $200 of Bitcoin, you can deposit your $200 of Bitcoin into Compound and borrow $100 of Ethereum. Then the way that it works as far as defaulting on your loan is as you have borrowed this Ethereum, it's going to accrue interest of how much you owe back. I don't know how much it is right now, but it's not a ton, maybe 4 or 5% a year. And Compound basically has a running tally of how much you've supplied and how much you owe. and they use oracles to keep track of the prices of everything. And if at any point your ratio of how much you've supplied to how much you owe drops too low to where your loan is now under collateralized based on what their rules are, you can be liquidated. And in that case, there's a decent network of bots that will liquidate your loan. And what that does is it would take your underlying assets. So say, let's stick with the same scenario. You deposited Bitcoin, you've borrowed Ethereum, you're now at the point where your loan's going to be liquidated. So I don't know what their exact numbers are for liquidation. Let's say you have now $200 of Bitcoin still locked up, and you owe $175 of Ethereum. What would happen is it would take your $200 of Bitcoin, it would sell off $175 worth of it for Ethereum, because that would be how they recoup the loan that they gave you. And then they also would take a pretty steep fee, around like 15% or so, on top of what you owed because your loan liquidated. So that's how they go about securing the entire marketplace. So that way, there isn't really a way to game that system and like just steal money from them. You would have to have some type of outside error there. Does someone have a question?
Gotcha.
No, I was thinking another thing that might be helpful too for pulling back is, there's as I know well myself, there's a lot of FOMO in this stuff of like, oh, people are making money in places I'm not. If you just took like a use case of someone, let's just say they have
one Bitcoin or one Ethereum,
right?
Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, what would you like? Do you think it's smart to put those assets to work in some way? And if so, what would be some of the better bets you could make if you were wanting to make that work for you in more ways than just the natural, deflationary stuff with Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Yeah, sure. And I'll also preface this with saying that all of these things, as no matter how much money is locked in them, are highly experimental. I would not put any more money into crypto in general than you are willing to lose. I'm a big time gambler, so I have a lot of cryptocurrency, but I would still, big word of caution there, just like all of it there could be catastrophic. For example, Aave, basically after launching their version 2, found a bug that would have been catastrophic for all their code, but they caught it and fixed it, thankfully. But like there are serious risks, especially in new things that are launching. But all that to say, right now some of the safest ways to earn interest is going to be with stable coins, which is especially nice because it's very easy. It's like, it's very easy to evaluate. Maybe you're scared of the volatility of crypto. You don't want to deal with how much Ethereum or Bitcoin can go up or down. You can put your stable coins into Aave or Compound, and probably based on how the rates are all variable, so it just depends on the amount supplied and the amount borrowed at any given time. You're probably going to earn double-digit interest over a year just putting stable coins in, which is probably more than 10x better than your bank account. But then as far as the other assets like Ethereum and Bitcoin, those don't typically earn as well in the money markets. The big thing is borrowing stable coins in those markets. That's what most people do, and people actually use it as a way to go like leveraged long, but I won't get into all that.
That's probably for the 201 class.
Yeah, I'll teach you how to be a real degenerate. But as far as like Ethereum and Bitcoin goes, generally the most consistent way to earn interest on those through the last year or so, where you can maybe just kind of try to set it and forget it, is being a liquidity provider. And that gets into what I saw a couple people tweeting about before this, like farming Sushi, or at a time you could farm Uniswap. But being a liquidity provider, I mentioned how pivotal, like important Uniswap was to DeFi. And so again, the way that works is you have an automated market of 2 tokens. So let's say you have an equal amount of Ethereum and Bitcoin. You have an automated market of 2 tokens that people can trade against, and the code inside of the smart contract will adjust the prices for each one appropriately as people trade against it. You can, as an end user, provide liquidity to that marketplace. And what that does is you would put in your Ethereum Bitcoin into this market and be one of the market makers. And you earn fees for doing that. So the more trading volume there is, the more you're going to earn. Let me pull up what the annualized fees are right now for that without ignoring anything else. So on Uniswap, I think that, let's see, right now. So one thing to note is that these fees are extremely volatile as well, because they're totally based on the volume that the site sees at any given time. But right now, if you were to provide liquidity to the Bitcoin Ethereum pair on Uniswap, you'd be earning for today 10% if it was prorated over a year, which is pretty good. Other pairs that have less liquidity, because the Bitcoin Ethereum pair has the most liquidity, so you're kind of divvying out those trading fees between the most people. You can see up to 3 figures of trading fees for highly volatile pairs. And so then to compound on that a little bit, you can, on Sushi Swap, also stake the liquidity that you are providing, and you would then earn Sushi tokens. And so Sushi tokens are the governance token for Sushi Swap, and they have, to this time, been very desirable. And so that adds on an additional, let me check. Right now it's 24.5% annual interest for providing liquidity with Bitcoin and Ethereum. So you can, with a pretty safe, easy set it and forget it, earn pretty significant ROI on your assets.
All right, let's share the screen. Walk us through it. The serious thing for me is, like, growing up, you're taught, like, if it's too good to be true, right? Like, it's probably too good to be true. And it sounds like if you have cash or you have crypto, like, this is a very plausible way to just make a return that, like you said, your bank account's not going to do it. Even some index funds now aren't going to trade at that percentage. Like, what is the risk here? And then, like, why aren't more people who have cash on the sidelines doing this versus, like, are they just not aware of it, or are they, what's that look like?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things there. One I think the primary reason, and the most important kind of the reason that everyone's building the stuff we're building, is that in building this decentralized, you're cutting out a lot of middlemen. You're cutting out a lot of people who are going to be taking fees and cuts of what you're doing. And so when you're basically directly connecting users who are providing market making to users who need liquidity to trade, you can pay them a much higher rate, because you're not paying for infrastructure and all these different things that you would have to otherwise. And so that is the main thing that allows you to have really good rates. And then on top of that, right now, I think you have an outsized risk of some type of failure that does not exist in most of the, like, current financial system, because it's not really super regulated. There isn't, this isn't all insured. If something happens, you can't just call up your insurance and be like, hey, I just lost all my Sushi tokens, can you help me out? They're not going to know what you're talking about. And then lastly, I think that there definitely is the demand for these products is outpacing the people who understand them and know how to provide liquidity and know how to do all this stuff. And so as that changes, and as more and more companies announce they're buying Bitcoin, and then more and more like Mark Cuban and more people are talking about DeFi, there's going to be more money coming into the space, because the returns are just too good. As the space grows and evolves and people are doing this, the returns are too good for people to ignore.
Yeah.
What would be some examples on, like, it makes sense to me if I'm providing liquidity and I'm getting returns based on that. What are the use cases? Who's actually buying up these tokens or my assets? Like, what are the things they're doing of putting these to use?
Here comes the degenerate stuff, right, Andy?
Yeah, so a lot of that right now is people like me who are doing more degenerate things with their money. And so I won't get into all that because no crypto 101 should be getting into these things.
But you're essentially saying
He's
if
trading
you,
leverage.
yeah, like I'm gonna make back what I'm taking faster with. I just need more capital. Like it's as simple as that.
Yeah. So
By buying
for the
Top Strats.
exchanges, exactly. It's just how can I buy more LeBron Cosmics? That's all I care about. But so for the exchanges, I think that they're actually the easiest use case to explain. Is I haven't used a centralized exchange other than offloading capital to pay taxes in like 2.5 years. I don't have a Binance account. I don't have a FTX account. I don't use any of those things. I only trade on decentralized exchanges. They're always up. They're always running. They give you really good rates. There's a ton of liquidity. There's billions of dollars of liquidity, and now they're doing billions of dollars of volume. And so I think those are just, especially just, there's serious demand. People want to trade on these things, and it's really easy to integrate your applications on top of them because it's all open and all decentralized. And so it's not even just degenerate stuff. There is a lot of degenerate stuff that people can do with it, but it's a serious use case of always up, can't crash exchanges, which is super valuable. We just saw with Robinhood, even, or like when Coinbase goes down because everyone wants to buy. I don't have that issue. I just open up Uniswap or Sushi Swap.
So I guess, I get concerned because it does, when you say like, other people are borrowing your money to do even more risky things with it, that feels like a house of cards, whereas if you told me, okay, this company wants to set up this Bitcoin mining eco-friendly farm and they need, $100 million to pull this off. And I'm like, okay, they're building something. It's going to, like, what are my concerns founded that it feels like a house of cards in that description?
So I think the one thing that is hard or sometimes easy to forget is that any time, so and as Peter said, the main thing going on here is people are trading leverage, and a lot of people are trading a lot of leverage because a lot of people are really bullish. Oh, I noticed the drink change from wine to an IPA.
We're going with a sour here.
Nice.
Yeah.
A lot of people are trading a lot of leverage, or there are better interest-bearing opportunities elsewhere. So for example, one of the most common things to do is basically use something like Maker or Compound or Aave, and I have a bunch of Ethereum. I don't want to sell it, no matter what. I don't want to sell my Ethereum, so I'm going to go put it into one of these loans, and I'm going to borrow some cash, borrow DAI or USDC or some stable coin. And then I'm going to go do something else with it. Right now, you can earn 25% providing liquidity. I'm hearing some echo from somebody.
I was just saying, someone I'm getting feedback from.
I think it's from Jennings, yeah.
Oh, am I not muted? That's me.
So right now, there's another exchange called Curve, which is a stablecoin exchange, or a stable asset exchange. You only swap between like-kind assets. So different versions of Bitcoin on Ethereum or different stablecoins. You can earn from just providing stablecoins, so no risk of price change. 20%, 25% providing liquidity there. So if I have to pay, I have my Ethereum locked up. I put it in there. I am earning some small amount of interest on the Ethereum I have put away, and then I'm paying 8% to borrow assets, and then I can go put them somewhere else and earn 25%. Then, like, it's not really a house of cards in that sense, because it all is collateralized. It's not that you're just giving me the money and I can go run away and break stuff. There definitely are risks of people combining too many things and getting crazy, and sometimes there'll be some real crazy degenerate stuff that happens. But for the most part, the core protocols that I've been talking about so far, they have user safety built in, or like protocol safety built in, that when when I'm borrowing the assets that you're providing to go do other degenerate stuff somewhere else, if things were to go bad for me, I'm the one who loses money, not the person who's lending. And that's how they're built out.
It feels like a combination between the rates make a lot more sense to me, like why the rate would be a little higher. We cut out the middlemen. And also, I think for everyone in the chat and us, if everything started crumbling, I would imagine it's not the people who have, a few $1,000 in or 10, like it would kind of start to hit the guys who have millions in or billions of dollars, right? Like, would it hurt the small guy first or the big guy, or it doesn't really matter? Like,
Well, so really, I think that kind of comes down to what you consider hurt, and like what you're doing. So if you're providing liquidity on an exchange, volatility is actually really good for you. The price is going up a lot and then going down a lot and then going up a lot that's great, because it means people are trading, they're trading against your assets, you're going to earn more fees. That's awesome. And so maybe in the immediate moment, Ethereum's price is tanking and you're like, oh crap, I'm losing a bunch of money. Yeah. But if you think that if you're holding Ethereum anyways, you probably think it's going to go up in the long term, you'll be okay. Where things going down can really negatively affect you is if you're on leverage or you have a loan or something, and then all of a sudden the price starts plummeting and you become under collateralized. That's where you can lose a lot of money. And there have been some pretty bad times with that. Like back in March, there was a really bad crash when everything was going on with coronavirus and stuff, and a lot of people were liquidated for a lot of money. And Maker had some issues with how their auctions worked, and people lost serious money. But if you're just providing liquidity on these things, it's not really as much a risk for you. It's mostly, most of the risk generally comes outside of protocol risk, bugging the code, something like that. Most of the risk right now comes from borrowing.
Gotcha.
And so the rates that you can earn just providing capital are as safe as you're going to have in the crypto space.
And what platforms is that, to be clear?
So there's 3 major exchanges where that's the case, and that would be Uniswap, SushiSwap, and Curve. Uniswap and SushiSwap are kind of all assets, anything goes. Curve is more focused on stable assets swapping between each other. And then the 2 main money markets where you can lend or provide your collateral for other people to borrow are Compound and Aave. Maker's system is pretty different. It's not really a place where you would go just to earn interest on your assets. It's more geared towards lenders than it is. Towards borrowers. There aren't really lenders on the system because Maker is creating its own token that it gives you called DAI. And that's how it creates their stablecoin DAI that's decentralized. But yeah, so I would say, just to reiterate, Compound and Aave for money markets, and then Uniswap, SushiSwap, and Curve for exchanges.
So I personally haven't dove into those, but one thing I did do, because I have a decent amount of my Bitcoin on Gemini. They just launched their Earn program. Conceptually, it made sense to me. Hey, it's just passively sitting here. I'm not using it. Why not earn some interest on it? I got a little spooked when I was reading, kind of the terms of service there for how the loan works. Could you talk a little bit about what some of those risks are? And I think one thing I was having a hard time wrapping my head around, it's like, if I loan it, say like a microfinance loan, and I'm like, I'm going to give you money to start this business. Like, I know if they go belly up or whatever, like that's the person. But when you're putting it into a liquidity pool, it seems more ambiguous of like where the point of failure is, how that's going to impact me directly versus the general pool of lenders.
Yeah, I will say with the caveat, I am in no way an expert on a lot of these, like BlockFi, Gemini, and stuff like that. It's not my primary focus. But to my knowledge, I believe a lot of those loans are somewhat insured, more so because they're a bit more centralized, but inside these companies. But I do believe that Gemini is starting to look into actually like using your money actively in DeFi, primarily through a site that I haven't really talked about very much, but that I'm a big proponent of, called Yearn, or some people call it Yearn. I don't know how you say it. YEARN Finance. And so their whole thing is basically just as easy as possible value accrual for any one particular asset. And so I do believe that they're at least like looking into using stuff like Yearn, where you can just kind of put your money somewhere and earn interest. So if you go to vaults, this shows you, and you can scroll down. That one, I don't know why that's their landing page one. It's a little more confusing. So you can see a bunch of different assets they have here and the current interest that you can be earning on them. That's what they call it, growth. So you can see the annual return right now for USDC on here is 20%. For DAI, which is the decentralized stablecoin from Maker, is 17.5%. So I'll give you a super basic way that someone would use DeFi. I have a bunch of Ethereum. I put it into Maker. I borrow a bunch of DAI. I'm going to be paying Maker like 4.5% annually for that DAI, and then I can deposit it into Yearn and make 17.5% annually. And so right there, I just basically got a free 13.5% annual on the DAI that I'm borrowing.
So what you're saying is Gemini is basically like, look, Pete, you're too lazy to figure out all of this stuff on your own and how to maximize it. You're going to just put it in. I'm going to pay you 3.4%. And because we know of all of these other kind of things in decentralized finance where we can maximize your money more than you, we're going to go put that to work. And for your trouble, we'll give you a little cut of the pie.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. I can't speak to that, the fact that that is exactly what everyone is doing all the time. Like, I don't think that's what BlockFi is doing. I think that's more institutional lending and lending to other people, market makers. I'm not totally sure. But I do know that Gemini is starting to look into the space of DeFi.
Gotcha.
I think one clarification that's really important is Andy is an Ethereum guy who's been working on all these different projects. So of course he's going to be immersed in these decentralized platforms. He's building code, doing protocols, working with people, heavily involved in the community. So he's going to be much more interested in that world versus what BlockFi and all these places are doing, which are basically third parties to hold your crypto assets. And like you said, there's a variety of ways in which they're offering interest, but they're actually a middleman. So in theory, if you have faith in these protocols and liquidity and all these things, then it'd be more attractive to go with the decentralized platforms, especially if you're someone like Andy. I mean, for Andy, it's a no-brainer given he has so much expertise and knowledge in the space. Obviously, it can be a bit overwhelming and confusing, but I think that's important context and why Andy's much more knowledgeable on like these decentralized platforms.
So what would be the training wheels version of what you're doing, the extreme, the non-leverage long, kind of back to Jack's question, like if you did have one Ethereum and you really wanted to maximize it and you were willing to be like, I'm putting this in, I know this is speculative, I know it could go to zero or this could be, but what would be kind of the smart ways to use that one Ethereum?
Yeah, so, and Peter could talk this a little bit because I kind of helped walk him through some of this, but I think the best thing to do is
we
probably...
don't want to hear from Peter.
Well, to clarify, Andy, I think it's really important. That is another barrier, and that is a cost that, when you say like Sushi Swap, for example, which, is something, a platform that I think is really interesting, for farming sushi, you're getting something like 84% annually right now. But
what?
Yeah. But the costs associated with this are the gas fees too. So there's the protocol risk. Like if you have fear of like bad actors within the network, Andy, you can definitely speak better to that than I can. But there's some risks, and then obviously you're loaning out these assets, and you end up being long Sushi. So there's also that part of it too. You're speculating if you're farming this stuff, you're speculating on those tokens that you're staking essentially. But I think that the gas fees are certainly something that are worth talking about, especially if you're only doing like one Ethereum. It's going to be really hard to make back that money because you're paying so much in gas fees right now, which I'd love to hear Andy's perspective on gas fees. Because we've talked a little bit about this. I think the perception is it's really negative, which it is. It hurts the small guy for sure right now, but it's also a sign of a healthy ecosystem and just a lot of demand on the network. So Andy, can you talk to us about the gas fees and how that would apply to like if you're trying to invest a smaller amount of money? Yeah,
honestly, if you had one Ethereum or something, I think that's a really good point, Peter. You probably don't want to do anything with it. Maybe if Coinbase has got, I don't know, if Gemini or Coinbase, someone wants to give you a couple % for it or something like that because they're going to use it better because they're going to lump up thousands of users Ethereum together and go do something with it. Sure, but as Peter was saying, over the last couple months, the cost of transacting on Ethereum has gotten really, really high. It's gone from, it used to cost $5 to $10 to swap between two tokens on Uniswap to now it costs 50. It's like 10x, and it's twofold. Part of it is because you pay to transact with Ethereum, and the price of Ethereum has gone up. And then also, basically, when you submit transactions, you're signaling to the people who are mining the network what fee you're willing to pay them. And so with such high rates and so many ways to earn interest and to make money, and one of the big things that we haven't really talked about and doesn't totally apply to this, but there's a lot of arbitrage that goes on Ethereum. There are a lot of people with really robust bot systems that are arbitraging all these different DeFi protocols, and they're making serious money. And so they're willing to pay a lot of money to send their transactions through. And so when you make a trade somewhere or you do something that then creates an arbitrage opportunity, someone is going to come in and they're going to close out that arbitrage opportunity, and they'll pay serious amounts for it. And so that's really driven up the cost of transacting to levels where it's going to, as Peter was saying, it's going to cost you $150 to get into a position of providing liquidity and staking that on SushiSwap. And so, let's say you're earning 40% interest annually. If you put in one Ethereum worth, let's just for the sake of math say it's $2,000. You're not going to make that much because if you're paying $150 to get into this. But if you're putting in $10,000, you're going to make some money. If you're putting in more than that, it's definitely worth it. But there is a serious cost to doing these things, and it is pricing a lot of people out who just want to more so experiment and play around with everything. All that to say, there are a lot of people who are really, really smarter than me, working on making this stuff work. There's some interesting proposals to upgrade the network. The biggest one, which I'm not super well read on, but the most popular one that is talked about all the time, is something called Ethereum. So the proposals are called Ethereum Improvement Proposals, or EIP. 1559, which is, if you want to really get into the weeds on something interesting, it talks about how you would basically changing some of the ways that people pay for transactions, and it could, in theory, help things out, but it's pretty contentious. A lot of the people who are mining on Ethereum don't like it because it probably means they'd be getting less fees, and so it's something that's actively being worked on. And there's a lot of what people call layer 2 solutions that are being worked on as well, which are networks built on top of Ethereum that help scaling using a lot of cool math normally, or fun game theory and race conditions and stuff. But you can kind of be priced out of doing stuff on Ethereum sometimes.
Trying to keep up with the chat, guys. Lots of good questions in there. We're just not going to be able to cover all the ground we want tonight. We also wanted to talk about some more NFT stuff. We even want to open some packs here. So if there's more interest for this stuff, we can do some maybe more deeper dives, provided Andy is up for it on a more focused subject. And
I will say, I think that was helpful, at least understanding the risks. And we didn't walk through how to actually do it, but now we understand why or how it kind of functions.
That can be 201. We'll do some screen sharing Sushi Swap exercises or something.
Yeah, I'm a Sushi Swap. I think there's definitely some steps, and you have to understand the gas and a variety of things, but once it's set up, it is pretty set it and forget it. I mean, obviously you can add to your farms and whatnot, but Sushi
So
Swap.
it's not like Farmville, you're not clicking around. That's what I want to do, is collect mini pieces of Ethereum.
I thought the most fulfilling or the most exciting part about farming on Sushi Swap is going to bed and then waking up to more sushi.
You wake up and you're
that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's highly addicting. Honestly, I'd say outside of all the stuff I've talked about, the biggest risk of doing all of this is that it's just going to completely crater your day job productivity. It's just going to ruin everything else for you.
Yeah.
Who has productivity anyways?
Thank you, Nate. Yeah. So it seems like people were enjoying this. Hop in the Discord. The link's down below. I was kind of soliciting questions for this earlier today. It's probably a good spot for me to kind of gauge what are the, most pressing questions. And then I can help go from there and be like, okay, we can do a show on sushi or whatever it is that you guys want to explore more. Let's talk a little bit about NFTs. When you say you're, over collateralized or degenning, are you doing all of this stuff so you can buy CryptoPunks? Andy, is that kind of what you're hinting at here?
I would be lying if I told you I have not bought a CryptoPunk on a loan before. That would be a lie. Um, yeah, I honestly, this is gonna sound ridiculous considering how big I was into Top Shot. I'm like kind of late to the game on a lot of NFT stuff. Top Shot was kind of my first foray into all of it, but since I got involved in that, I've just been addicted. I like can't stop talking to people about different projects and like and getting involved. And the Hashmasks launch was also really exciting for me. That was a really fun thing. I don't know if anyone else here participated in that.
Give us your 30 seconds on what made those valuable. I'll give 30 seconds on Cryptopunks. It was the first NFT only 10,000 made. So I think like you get the first, right? But what's the appeal on a Hashmask?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the appeal on Hashmasks is just that they look cool. I really think that I liked how they look. And I think they did a really good job with their launch. There was a ton of hype. Like everyone on Twitter, like on crypto Twitter, was talking about the Hashmasks and the ones that they had bought. And so the way that they did their launch was you didn't know which ones you had gotten even after you had purchased them up until all of them had sold out. And so there was just a ton of hype building up around getting close to them selling out and what one were you going to get and not know and all the unknowns. And I think they just executed all that really well. And people were going crazy about them right when they launched. Then they had a little bit of a dip as everyone was just, a lot of people just bought it because they wanted to flip them and try to make some cash. And after that kind of wave of people who were selling were gone, they've started to really pick up in volume again, and people are buying them. I think they're super cool. I think that people are going to care about these for a while just because they're really interesting and unique. But that's the hash.
Yeah, like scrolling, I literally think I have a fucking sickness. Like I see this and I'm like, this is so sick. Like I want to own one. And I don't know, like it feels problematic.
Well, what I would say to that, and I think this is really, I think even more so, I guess one step back, one thing that I've learned being in crypto for as long as I have, which feels like an eternity, even though it's been, I don't know, like 4 years, is the space is like insanely hype driven, more so than anything else I've really ever been a part of, and like insanely narrative driven. There's just at any given time you can go on Twitter and find someone saying that the thing that you just bought was really stupid and the thing that you bought was the best financial decision you've ever made in your entire life. And so I think it's really important to like do your own research on these things. You hear that all the time, but it actually really is to have like foundational opinions on what you think is valuable, what you care about, and like really have conviction in the things that you're buying in both like DeFi or any crypto stuff and NFTs, because there's going to be points where you're like, oh, crap, I'm an idiot. I really should have bought something else. And there's going to be points where you're like, oh man, I'm so smart. I bought the right thing. And if you don't really have strong conviction in what you're doing, you're going to lose a lot. Or you may not lose money, but you're not going to be as successful as you could have otherwise been.
I think that's one thing that's hard for me. A lot of us are experiential learners. You get your hands on something and you understand it. And that's why Top Shot in that gateway to the NFT world has been so accessible. You can buy a $9 pack. You can buy a $3 Fred Van Vliet on the marketplace, username Overzet. But with some of these art things, I want to get my feet wet. I want to have something in my OpenSea account. But I look at these drops and it's $1,500 right out of the gate. And like, where are the entry level NFT projects where we can kind of mess around, get a feel for the MetaMask, for the OpenSea, for the Nifty Gateway without having to remortgage our house to do so?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it's I think part of that right now is like what's coming with the nature of it being such an emerging field and such a speculative field is that, there was a point in Top Shot where everything was insanely cheap, and now not quite as much especially like for Series 1. And like there's just so much speculation and demand right now that it's really hard to have things come out that are cheap. It's just like not really easy to do. If your product is good, people are just going to buy it until they can't buy it anymore. And if your product is bad, it'll be cheap, but no one's going to care. And so right now, boring answer is there isn't really. Buy more Top Shot $9 packs.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, at some point, the reason the CryptoPunks, that narrative and that first mover and stuff like that, it's a powerful story that it seems like it's going to be bulletproof to a lot of things. But a lot of these, every single night, these, nifty, these, so rare drops that are going for, 5 ETH or whatever, like that has to crater at some point when one, the market gets so saturated that it's like, there's so many things, or two, better stuff comes along, like really, really good artists or famous artists. And that's where people want to put their money on.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And that's why I think, and people talk about this a lot with NFTs, is buy stuff that you love, where if you didn't sell it, you'd be okay with it. Yeah. I think that's really, really important because right now it seems like these are highly liquid assets that you can buy and flip and trade. But up until a month ago, that was not the narrative of NFTs. The narrative was like, these are very illiquid, and if you want to try to buy these things and flip them, that is like a multi-month long commitment to be doing these things. Like, look at most CryptoPunks. Look at their sales history. There's like 2 sales for any of them. If you see a CryptoPunk with more than like 3 sales, that's crazy. And so like for the longest time, that was the narrative. And so yeah, there's a lot of hype right now, and there's a lot of people who are buying and selling and making a lot of money. But don't get caught up in that FOMO too much, just because there's a real chance that you're going to see a lot of these things like dry up in demand or liquidity. And if you don't have stuff that you like, that you are happy to showcase on whatever like metaverse virtual world thing you are a part of, you might be pretty bummed.
It's funny you tell me not to get caught up in FOMO, except I'm in a group chat with all of you guys where you were trying to basically turn the screws of FOMO on me. Like I was on a stretching torture device, and it was like, Peter, get a CryptoPunk. But I have held strong.
Yeah, it's admirable. I would like to add one other thing to that. I think there's a really cool project out right now, and I know we got some questions about it, or at least one that I remember seeing about NFTX.
Yeah.
So NFTX is essentially building index funds for different NFTs. And so the way that works is, say I have a CryptoPunk, and I want to have a little more liquidity for it. Oh yeah, look at this. So these are all their different funds. So they have like Punk, Punk Basic, Punk Female. And then they have some for other things like Axie and Hashmasks and stuff like that. You deposit one of your punks into the Punk fund and get back 1 token. And then what you can do is trade that on Uniswap or Sushi Swap, like I was talking about before. And so it creates a little bit of a more liquid asset, which you can also buy portions of. So at any point, you can redeem a real CryptoPunk for 1 Punk token. But at the same time, if you just want to, place a $100 bet that Punk tokens are going to go up in value, that the base price of a Punk token is going to be, or a CryptoPunk is going to be more valuable than it is right now, you can buy 0.1 Punk token, and you can get that for, $500 or something, and have a little bit of exposure to CryptoPunks without having to own one yourself.
Jack, why don't you talk about your CryptoPunk purchase and how much of it was driven from FOMO, from you thinking of it as an investment vehicle, your personal connection to it? What were all the variables you were juggling?
So I'll just start with like, I logged in, or I put up my CryptoPunk, and I have my MetaMask wallet. And like, I talked about this on Clubhouse last night. It still feels like, for the new person, it's a very confusing space to get in. Like when I go on the site, it shows I have it, but then when I click my MetaMask wallet, like it's tough to actually locate it, and it's confusing. So I just think that's like the weirdest part about this whole thing, is we're still very far away from mass adoption. So while stuff's going up, there it is. But why did I buy this? So I was being an asshole and going around, and every time someone asked me like, do you believe in Top Shot, I would start with this statement: if I could bet every single dollar I had on NFTs, not necessarily Top Shot, I would. Like, I'm still a believer in Top Shot. I think first mover, NBA license, everyone knows how we feel about Top Shot. But if I could just bet the same way you kind of just showed us, like you can make a bet by buying a token on CryptoPunks. If I could just do that in NFTs, I would. And this felt like the closest thing to that, to a degree. So I'm going to continue to, buy into more NFTs across the board. But being the first ever NFT That's kind of like why I went with that. And then I tweeted out like why I bought this one specifically. It was actually the first time I sold Bitcoin to buy anything in the space. I had always been just converting cash into crypto and then buying with that. But this is the first time that I've actually let go of some Bitcoin, because I felt like at this point, it's like that's part of the reason. Like the thing with everyone holding is like if everyone just holds on to shit, like it'll never grow. Like there has to be exchanges of the currency. So I felt like to a degree I was giving back to the the price rise of Bitcoin as well.
Is it something, do you view it as, because you mentioned like the personal connection to it, are you in it for the long run? Or I mean, if you were able to flip that, I mean, I'm not going to do the LeBron Shark game with you, but I'm just curious, kind of, has it become more personal as a collectible, or do you still see it as an investment vehicle? Or can it be?
I was just messing around. I wanted to see if I could list it just to confirm it was in my account. But I think Jennings nailed it. It gives me the feeling of it's going to be like, do you own one or not? Like a no coiner, when there's 21 million of them, there'll be more coiners than I think not, like not technically, but you get the concept there. With CryptoPunks, it could literally, like, what drives them could just be a clout thing. Like it might just raise value because you have one and someone else doesn't, which in traditional, like, you look at history, like that's what drives Gucci sales. And that's what, like, why do I own a $90 white t-shirt just because it's a Gucci label versus a $4 Hanes t-shirt? Of course, the product and the quality of it come into play. But in this situation, I think it's just going to be like you're holding a piece of history to a degree.
Yeah. This is a question, and kind of, it's almost kind of like the cliche counter to stuff, but I actually think there's some truth to it. And I'm kind of curious your guys' thoughts. Like, I've personally been extremely cautious with coronavirus stuff. I've barely done anything for almost a year now. I've been doing content nonstop. I've been living online more so than I ever have in my life. And it's been good in some ways. It's been really fun to grow these communities and do more stuff. But on the other hand, I'll tell you what, like when I can start traveling again and start doing stuff, I'm not going to be doing shows like every Tuesday night. Like, I'm sorry. Like I'm not going to be extremely logged in. I'm curious, what are your guys' thoughts on how post-coronavirus life is going to impact digital collectibles? Because it feels like you have two things. Like, I do think they're here to stay long-term, but the euphoria and mania around them, I feel like you could make a pretty good argument that it's driven by the, environment of our times right now.
Yeah, I definitely get that. But I don't think it really changes very much about the bull case of NFTs. And Peter, you're echoing again, by the way.
Let me mute him.
And I think, I guess I kind of have two feelings here. So one is, yes, people are going to go back outside and going to go do more things and be less plugged in online. But maybe also everyone being, so society is getting more and more digital, more and more online, just in general, prior to COVID. And so maybe that this whole period of time just like hyper sped up that movement. And I'm not confident we're ever it's gonna go back. I think, yes, people will be going back outside and doing things, but I think also that the people who got exposed to NFTs and are doing these things now and are interested in all these new different online things are not going to all of a sudden be uninterested in those. It just won't be taking over their life. But that doesn't mean that people are going to sell them or not want to own them. I think that that's totally different, as opposed to like, maybe I won't be day trading them because I have things to do with my day. But I don't think that changes like the bull case around, especially with the younger generations moving more and more online and not caring as much about, or like understanding the difference between the physical world and the digital world, and that kind of all just being merged into one.
Yeah,
I agree. It felt like the tipping point. Like it was a bad event that happened with the whole pandemic, but now we're living in a digital age. I'm curious, right? Like instead that $500,000 vacation you were gonna take, but instead you bought, you know, some cool cats and got the rewards. I could see the small money pulling out. But then again, think about the money that everyone made from this time that got involved. So it's like, if they're just pulling out the profits, does that really tank it? Is it big money? Is it small money? I'm interested to see what happens.
Yeah, I do think, I think that point of it being accelerated and getting there quicker than we might have been. And that's what's going to be really interesting, is how maybe that, like we were saying, the liquidity, the daily action on it. I think I will just say this, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but I feel like I don't want to buy the top on some of these NFTs, because I do think if you're a long-term believer, there's going to be some good opportunities to buy low on these things. Like my FOMO, like I'm just extending it to a longer time horizon and knowing I'm going to have better windows to get in than I do right now. And maybe
Yeah,
that's
I think
wrong.
that's total. No, I think that's totally fair.
I think that's totally right. I mean, I think we're going to see a variety of just, you know, flows of the market. I mean, look at Top Shot. It was mooning like 3-4 weeks ago, and then, you know, they did a lot of development and really put restrictions on packs, and they, you know, we're actively trying to keep the platform stabilized versus growing, and that depressed prices. And now, you know, today we have
5.5.
Yeah, and it's getting back towards the top, and it's a lot different. It's not just like big ticket items selling; it's more mass adoption. Almost, yeah. Wow.
What do you guys, as far as now circling back to Top Shot? You know, Top Shot has been on the record. They said, you know, hey, we're not doing marketing. You know, we're getting things out here. Almost out of their control now. We have Gary Vee leaking things. We have Brian Windhorst writing an ESPN article today. We have a clip of Logan Paul talking about it. I mean, the marketing is happening, whether they want it to or not. And yet, on the other hand, I was just talking to Andy before the show about last Saturday, before the holo drop, we had this market crater because everyone was selling off their stuff to be able to try to buy a pack. And that's kind of what I love about Top Shot, is that even in a bull run, these things with the challenges and the drops and stuff are creating these other buy opportunities. But I guess the question I'm trying to arrive at here is, do we think that this rocket ship for Top Shot is just going to keep getting out of control now that you have so many big influencers talking about it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to speculate on how. To be honest, Top Shot's already bigger than I ever really considered it getting. It was like this was not what I expected at all. So it's kind of already blown past a lot of my expectations. And I think just talking about the different influencers and stuff talking about it, and Top Shot saying that they are not really focusing on advertising or marketing right now, I think it just goes to show how awesome a platform they have. And there's been a lot of issues, and I mean, there's been a lot of issues, and there's been a lot of people who have been really unhappy about a lot of things. But I mean, from the time that I got on the app and still now, I love being on Top Shot and scrolling through the marketplace and trying to find a good deal and browsing everything. They just knocked all that out of the park, in my opinion. And I think that that's just a testament, that this is all just a testament to that. And so I could see it getting even bigger, but it's already, as I said, it's already bigger than I expected it to ever be. So I don't want to get my hopes up too high.
Yeah, Pete.
Before we go in a Top Shot rabbit hole, because I'm gonna have to run at some point, and I did schedule a private meeting with Andy. I need to get my questions out of the way. It's on NFTs though, so a few things that popped into my head, and we can kind of rapid fire them. Number one, when I bought the LeBron moment, right, the Kobe tribute dunk, everyone said, well, you can't touch it, blah blah blah. So I was like, what if we created a digital frame for it that kind of paid tribute to Kobe as well? And we created, are we at the point? And then another thing was could we commission an artist to make NFT of Club Top Shot and sell off mini NFT moments to the community? And then the last one is, I have a friend who's trying to figure out, he has signed collection of shoes of LeBron, Kobe, Chris Paul, the Olympic team. Would he be able to tokenize that collection and sell it off? And then from there, this might be the second step, would someone be able to then go take that and put it on their genie avatar? Like it feels like these shoe drops that Nike does, where people, I got them or whatever on the Kicks app. Like they don't actually buy them to wear half the time. They're just doing it to resell, right? Like they're actually pretty close to the digital. So what stage are we in to where we could all create an NFT with an artist to like actually selling, like digitizing shit we already own?
Yeah. So, okay. I'll try to do this relatively rapid fire. First thing you said, what was the very first question that you had?
Like the Kobe create a frame.
I think that's going to happen. But it's funny, if you talk to like some people really in the NFT space, they say that that's kind of like the boomer version of what NFTs NFTs are about. Like you don't buy an NFT so you can frame it on your wall. You buy an NFT to display in the metaverse on your 3D virtual world reality headset situation like that. And that's like an interesting debate. I am pretty into that idea. I was talking to my friends about like making a Raspberry Pi display thing that would let you send it a link to a showcase and then it could loop through your showcase and do something like that. Like I think that'd be sick. I would totally buy one.
Well, that's like a good point too about we're stuck in between right now, or in the middleman between this metaverse concept and the real world thing, where that once the metaverse concept fully is a reality, like you're not going to ever think about wanting to hang this. But right now you kind of want to hang it on your desk.
No, I even mean like a virtual frame to where it would.
Oh, okay.
There's actually another company that just announced funding like 2 days ago, maybe even yesterday. And I think they're called Try Showtime, made by this guy named Alex, he's a pretty well-known guy in the crypto Twitter space. And they got funding to basically make like some type of social media NFT gallery display thing. It's going to happen. It's still something that's super early and it's all speculative, but it's going to be a thing at some point for sure.
Gotcha.
If we wanted to tokenize Club Top Shot stuff and sell it, we could do that tomorrow. I know people. We could do it. That's not an issue.
What did you say, Andy?
We can monetization.
Yeah, we can have a later conversation about that. But I know some artists too.
Okay.
The stuff about tokenizing sneakers, I think that's really interesting. I am tangentially involved with a project called Scene House, which so their whole thing is doing like physical artwork auctions and partnering them with NFTs. So it's not quite tokenizing. We're not quite there yet because there's some limitations in, okay, so let's say I want to tokenize a sneaker. How do you prove that you did? You would either need like Nike to be on board with tokenizing sneakers from the moment they were created. And, they have some tamper-proof way to prove that this is the sneaker that's associated with this token, or you need some third-party like custodial holder of the sneaker, and so then you tokenize your signed LeBron sneaker and you send it to like a StockX style place or something, and they hold it and they mint your token that is claimable for this, and then you could do that as you please, and people have to trust that StockX actually is, or whatever company is actually holding the sneaker. I think that's harder. That's a really challenging issue of how do you tokenize real world assets. And it probably is going to have to involve some type of legal framework. Otherwise, it's just really hard to keep people in line. But there are some really cool projects and ideas going around. I've seen some NFT auctions on this app called Foundation that did something similar, where when you bought the NFT, the artist also sent you a physical artwork. There's a lot of stuff going on like that I think is pretty cool. And kind of a cool way to bridge the physical art world and the NFT art world. I think that was all your questions.
Yeah. Well, the last leg is like, like in that world where maybe genies are like, everyone has a genie. If we tokenize the signed shoe, and then 10 people could own, like say they own that and then put it on their genie and be wearing a LeBron signed shoe. Like it's crazy to think about, but that would totally be like something people, like that's going to happen.
So Genie's just had a drop yesterday on Nifty Gateway. Okay. I bought them.
I can't figure out how to buy it. I think Genies are like the coolest concept ever. Like we're all gonna have our own genie at
Yeah.
some point, right?
And so I think there's essentially no way that that's not like a part of whatever the next
Yeah.
digital age is. It's just more a matter of like in what exact aspect. But
Gotcha.
yeah, all that stuff's gonna happen for sure, in my opinion.
Okay.
Jack, what's your heart out? Do we have time to open a pack or two?
Yeah, 8:30. 8:30.
All right.
I'm out. I'm going on Justin's show.
Shout out to Own the Movement, a very good Top Shot podcast, YouTube show. Jack is going on there at 8:30. You can roll.
And did he just win the best ball for something like some big prize?
Jack, that was a while ago, but yes.
Okay. I saw the Honeybee did a podcast with him or something. So.
Yes. Justin is a noted crusher who is wildly successful at everything he does, and I hate him for it. No, you guys definitely check out Own the Movement podcast after this with Jack. Will be a good time. Pete, did you have any other things here before we rip open a pack? Anything you want to put a bow on this combo?
Only one thing. I mean, you're really gonna be FOMOing about CryptoPunks. This is your chance. I mean, since we talked before, I think the cheapest CryptoPunk now is 8.4 ETH, and basically, yeah, it's going to be 9 soon, it seems. So ignore everything else we talked about timing the wave and all that stuff. Imagine being a no punk.
What would you bet me about me being able to buy a CryptoPunk? Do you think I'll never be able to buy a CryptoPunk under 8 ETH? Because I would take that bet.
No, you'll be able to buy. There'll be chances for sure, but a better way to look at it.
Whoa, I don't know if that's true. You think for sure?
Well, there's mistakes. People sometimes make mistakes and put some up there. Like, will Mans actually be able to get one? I don't know. But the real question is what is the floor 95% of the day? And yeah, is it likely to go under 8? I mean, probably, but
the other thing for me was, and I was talking to some people about this before, if I would have to do what Jack did with his and sell some of my Bitcoin to do that. And I really have to ask myself, do I think that it's a better long-term bet than Bitcoin? And I think you can make a very good case in the short to midterm. It probably will appreciate more. But once we start getting in longer time horizons, if we're talking 5-10 year time horizons, I'm still betting on Bitcoin.
Give me the punk. I think Bitcoin has a fine ceiling. I just think that the floor, obviously, they're correlated, but yeah, Bitcoin, is a safer asset. I think if NFTs really continue the kind of momentum they have, and obviously there's going to be ups and downs, but if NFTs are a thing 5 to 10 years from now, I think there's a really high chance that punks are a much better investment, strictly because they have there's a defined kind of ceiling that Bitcoin can have. Just because we know, the market cap of gold, or you can start looking through just macroeconomics trends, like money supply, et cetera. And Bitcoin's already worth whatever, 800 some billion right now, 900 some billion. It could be, gold's in that 10 trillion, 11 trillion range. That's a very realistic market cap of Bitcoin. But 3 trillion or something like that, it starts to get harder. So there's definitely a ceiling on Bitcoin. And there's a ceiling on punks as well, but there's only 10,000 of them. And if the crypto ecosystem continues to grow, there's more opportunity for 100x with punks than
the redheaded fish I sell my CryptoPunk to is just because he has so much money in his FOMO, and it's going to be such a good feeling.
I will just say this. I am not bearish on CryptoPunks. I wish I had one, but I am not going to make a purchase about something I don't understand just because everyone is doing it. I think it has a very
good idea. I'm just mostly teasing, but yeah, we should open some back.
Yeah. And I just want to make sure that it's Pete that's on the record saying CryptoPunks are a better investment than Bitcoin, and not me.
I love Bitcoin. I'm saying more of a higher ceiling. Just a higher ceiling.
I agree. Well, it's funny. I talked to a friend about that because I refuse to sell my Bitcoin, and I'm still a believer it could hit 100, 150, 300, 500, whatever it is. Okay. But at this point, when it was at 3 and we're talking about 50,000 or 100,000, 20x, 50x is in the cards for what we're thinking. Now that it's kind of floored out around 50K, it's even if we go all the way to 150, it's still only 3x. And could the floor be $100,000 on every punk? Absolutely.
in the one thing as I will continue to spread my CryptoPunk FUD here, obviously Bitcoin has battled against lots of challengers, and I know CryptoPunks has the equivalent in the NFT space of the similar origin story, the first mover advantage, all of that stuff. But I feel like the threats to CryptoPunk's narrative are much stronger than the threats to Bitcoin's narrative as the first digital store.
No, if you want to play in cash games your whole life, just stick in Bitcoin and we'll chase GPPs.
We're going to the club. I'm not dealing with this shit. Yo, what up? It's DJ Pete Overzet. Welcome to the club. We didn't think things were going to get popping tonight, but it's about to get lit. Behind door number 2, it's a 3-pointer. 13-25, Kevin Durant.
Let's go.
We're going to get a LaMelo. We're going to get a Luka. We're going to get a LeBron. Click the reveal. Let's go. God damn it. I don't need another layup. To the window. To the wall. The De'Aaron Fox stripped down my ball. 293 assists. 293. Everybody get their drinks. Let's get a cheers tonight before we open up these nice packs. Cheers, fellas. You thought we were talking DeFi all night without going to the club. You are sorely mistaken. I secured a Cool Cats pack last night. One of the perks of being an influencer is you can wait in line behind 20,000 people and get a pack. One of the many perks. And what I'm also very excited about is getting the Cool Cats music again, because the Cool Cats music is orders of magnitude better than the base pack music. So it's going to get lit tonight, guys.
Let's do it.
Here we go. Waiting. God, if this was... Oh, here we go.
I'll play.
Which number? Behind which door? Let me get a number, Jack. 3. Click 2. Reveal. Is that LeBron James? That's a
LeBron!
No look 3. We are running hot. Jack, give me another number. Jack. 5. Behind door number 5. Can you top the king? You probably cannot. We got another dunk. A joke. Let's go. The influencers are getting all the gems. They say it's randomized. But why does Petey Pax get a Jokic and LeBron? What number, Pete? What number? 2.
This is insane.
Imagine not getting a LeBron, Embiid, and Jokic in your Cool Cats pack.
Make it rain, bro.
Andy, give me a number, Andy.
Let's go number 1.
Behind door number 1. We don't even have a Cool Cat yet.
No.
How many Hall of Famers can I get in one pack?
I'll play.
What's the best Cool Cat he can pull right now?
I think Tyler Hero is the best as a price right now.
Top it with Hero.
One of you nerds calculate the EV of this pack. Give me Tyler Hero. Give me him. Ooh, John Wall.
Wow. What a pack. I thought my pack was good because I got like KD and Giannis, but that's nothing compared to that.
I love the fans. Fuck you. I just had a great poll. Jesus. Hang on. I mean, I got to put this back up here. I mean, what a ridiculous rip. I mean, come on.
Carlini said, sir, the EV is always the same. What you want the nerds to calculate is the value.
All right, guys, we appreciate you. Everyone head over, watch On the Movement with Jack after this. Andy, thank you so much for giving us your time tonight, man.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it again. We can get a little more hands-on. I'll do some fun explainers. I wanted to I wanted to shout out because we talked a little. Jack talked a bit about having trouble viewing his NFTs. I highly recommend the Rainbow mobile app. It's an Ethereum wallet app, and it is awesome for NFTs.
You can
I
hold
highly,
like
highly,
assets, currency, whatever in it.
yeah, and you can also just link your. So if you have a ledger or an account in MetaMask, you can have it like watch one of your accounts, and so you can just use it to view and keep track of all your stuff. It's really, really
What's
nice.
it called? Download it
Rainbow.
now. I gotta
Rainbow.
look at my NFTs. What the fuck is the point of it? Wait, is it a mobile app?
Yep.
It's called Rainbow Wallet.
There you go. I
Bang,
try to go
bang.
out on a high note, but tonight we went out talking about Rainbow Wallet. That's what happens. Pete,
Wait,
any final words?
I have a question for Jennings and Andy.
Yeah.
Where would you go shopping for digital art? Nifty, Super Rare, are those like the two spots?
I'm a big super rare guy personally, but there's a lot of good spots, and I'm deep in that rabbit hole. That Beeple stuff is outrageous, and definitely the top artists in the space right now.
Yeah, I would piggyback on top of that, and also just say wherever you think the coolest art is. Foundation and Zora are doing cool stuff. Known Origin is cool. There's a lot of places where there's a lot of cool stuff going on. And art is so subjective that I would say just find the artists that you like and follow them around, and you're probably going to find other artists you like, and you'll build out kind of a portfolio of what you like that way.
All right, guys. Follow
Thanks,
Andy
fellas.
on Twitter, Andy8052. Thank you to my club members, Jack and Pete. We never know when we'll be back, but we will be back soon. If you guys want to listen to the iTunes version, I'll get that audio up after the fact. If you guys want to come hang out in the Deposit Kingdom Discord, that link is down below. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, especially if you're a lady. I'm trying to boost those females in my YouTube analytics. We will see you guys next time.
Break.